What's going on, Junior's Fishing Company? I've been kind of going back and forth about the next couple videos, and I've been toying around with this 6th Sense swim jig, and it's got a little bit, it's like a dark navy, and so I actually found some marabou that kind of looks like that. So again, I try to, whenever I tie a bait, I try to just match the head. So I'm really picky about the heads that I find, and I just try to make the bait based on what the head looks like. And so I've been looking for some stuff. I'm going to do that with a marabou. So today this is a Berkley swim jig, 4/0, 3/8 ounce. Just swim jig with a weed guard, and I'll get that out of the way in just a sec. Chartreuse in white, kind of like these angled eyes. They look pretty cool. I'm going to do deer hair, and the tail of this bait is going to be just normal. I mean, you know, it's going to be like a long saddle. Not super long. I'm hoping this bait can be about 6 inches. I mean, these saddles are 18, so you cut them pretty short, but save the butts and you can still try and get some dries out of them. So the one thing that's weird, and you'll find it with lots of jigs that you buy from stores, they're not meant to tie on. And so you buy a, you know, an Orvis big game hook, and it's meant to be tied on. People at Berkley weren't thinking, what's the best way to wrap deer hair on this hook? So there's a weird, and I've already wrapped, there's a weird lead bump right here. Again, I don't know if you can see it. There's a weird lead weight right here, and I didn't want to remove it because I didn't know if it's like fully attached to the hook. So I'm actually going to put a little base of deer hair and my saddle there, and I'm going to put one thing of deer hair up by the skirt collar, and then I'm going to put 2 up here. So yeah, some of these jigs that you have to improvise because they're not meant to do what, you know, we're doing on them now. So I'm going to put down a base of deer hair here first, and then I'm going to get my saddle on. And you just have to be careful because I don't want it to fall down here and I don't want it to slip down there. So I'm gonna, when I get this wrapped on, I'm gonna get it kind of the length. So 6 inches is about right here, and that's where my saddle's gonna go. So I want that deer hair to go about 1.5 inches before, so that should be good. When I get this spun around, I'm going to actually glue it down because it's going to slip. I know it's going to. And so, because it's kind of like a cone coming down, I don't want it to slip. I'm using 210 red Danville. I found with these videos, red is just easier to see. If I was using a white thread, it would be harder to kind of see the wraps. And honestly, a red collar, you know, a red gill plate can't hurt, you know. So I'll give it 2 good, and actually I have to get my skirt, or my weed guard out of the way. So I have these little hair clips. If you have a wife or a girlfriend or a 2-year-old daughter, I have 2 of the 3. I'll let you guess which 2. And I'm going to try and get this skirt collar out of the way as best I can. It's really not an easy thing to do because these skirt collars, when you bend them up, they don't want to move, or they don't want to sit up there. So I'm going to hope that stays. It won't. When it falls, I'll just move it back up. So I'll put some pressure on here. I'm just going to try to avoid touching that head as much as I can. And this is pretty thin. And this lead, I don't know what you'd call it, body, is really thick. So I'm not going to quite spread out as much as I would prefer. But I don't want to load up down here with deer hair. So it's kind of like almost like a lose-lose. If I put too much deer hair down here, it's going to be a super bulky tail. But if I don't put enough, you're going to kind of be able to maybe even see through a little bit. And that's alright. I'd rather have that than... I don't want this tail to be bulky. When your tails are too bulky, they don't swim how you want them to. They just kind of move in the water. They don't have that action that you want. So before I put anything else down, I'm going to load this down. And it looks ugly. It really does. But that's alright. Because you're not going to see this anyway. I'm going to load that down. I'm going to even get in there with glue. Because you just don't want your thread slipping. Let me get those hairs back up. And now I'll let that dry. And then I'll put my hackle on. So that's about as dry as it's going to get. So I've got 3 stacks of these saddles. And I'm going to put the longest ones down. These are a little bit tapered. If you ever want to taper them more, always pull up. Don't pull down, because these barbs face down. So you don't want the barbs to flare when you're just a little tip. But so I'm going to put my longest ones down, and that'll go about 6 inches. Trim those up. These are going to go right on bottom. Right on the top. Get 3 or so good wraps right there. Maybe I can kind of splay these out. And I'm going to go 1 on this side, 1 on that side. I'm not going to put any on the side of my hook. These are a little bit shorter. Trim them up. Good tension wraps. Watch your hook point for sure. These are these Berkley swim baits are really good hooks. I like them. I think I said it's a 4/0. And I've got some broken tips. I think that one's a broken tip. It really doesn't matter. These are so thin. I mean, if you're selling this bait or you're, giving it to a friend, you might be a little more picky. But the broken tips are going to swim just as good because they're just as thin. It's not like the tip makes the whole action of the feather. It doesn't. So don't worry about, that's a $75 saddle. I'm not going to throw everyone away that doesn't have a tip on it. So you just put them on and they swim just fine. I thought about putting a little bit of peacock herl in there. but it just doesn't, it's not quite the grain that I want. So I'm not going to worry about trimming these too close because I'm going to come way down on this lead bump. I'm going to try and weasel my way around and get a half hitch in there. Then I'm going to end up gluing it anyway. And I'm going to come down here. I'm going to come way up, get a decent thread base in there, because you're going from super thick here to super thin. It was just such a weird configuration. I don't know. Oop, I'm about to lose that. I don't know if they saw that it sinks differently with a little weight in the back. But I don't know. I don't work at Berkley, so. Berkley's a big fishing company too, so sure they know what they're doing. There's probably a reason for it. You know, it's not really a guess and check kind of thing, but so get a little bit of a thread base there, and then I'm going to wrap right up here, right by where that cone is. I guess it would be at the bottom of that cone. I'm going to put a stack of Chartreuse in white, and I'm going to do 2 up top. So I've already got these stacked and ready to go. I had a big stack of Chartreuse in white, and I just split them into 2 for my 2 stacks. And then I always take the stack that I'm going to have at the head, I always do on its own, because I want it more at the base of the bucktail, so that should be alright. I want some room for those tails that tail to move around. Cord up my thread. And it's really nice to have that cone right there, because it's going to keep all my hair, I'm sticking to my side, where I want it. And the reason I went so far up is because that cone, you can already see, it's going to flare that deer hair quite a bit. But again, you pick a jig and you go with it. It's just the way it's going to be. Work it all the way around. This is a pretty thin stack, so you're going to be able to see that red through. Now you can see that goes almost 90 degrees. It's because it's hitting that cone. And that's alright. I'm not too worried about it. If I wrap down, it's probably just going to get worse. But when I put another stack over, it's going to push it down. And actually, you can see this side isn't doing it as much. So I can actually, I'm thinking out loud here, kind of move more of the hair onto the actual top of the bait. But for the most part, it's going to get pushed down anyway. And I'm going to put some flash down. That will also help it too. So that should be alright. So now I'm going to put some flash down. I'm going to put my flash down here so that this top stuff can just be stacked. So I've got some flash. This is, actually it doesn't say. This is flashabou, kind of standard flashabou, but it's like a chartreuse. It's definitely not holographic. It's kind of like opal and green, but it's not like crazy obnoxious. So I'll kind of taper that out. And this is a lot. I'll end up trimming quite a bit of this off. I'm going to put it on the top. Here. Rotate it on top with a thread pressure wrap. Wrap again, and then I'm going to separate it between the hook. So, I'm just trying to tame that bump down. It's still there. I'm trying to just tame it down a little bit. So I'm putting a little clip there. So now I'm up on top. And again, I have to worry about this bump right here. So I want to get as far up here as I can when I'm going to wrap this second stack. But I want enough room for my last one. So I've got my other stack here. Get them nice and even. Get some of those shorter ones out. And again, this is pretty thin. It's not crazy thick. Let's see where I'm at here. Got that hair ready, and then I'm going to clip back, and then I'm going to lay this down. And this is really thick. It's a lot of lead and a 4/0 hook, so it'll look really thin. But again, you'd rather go thin than thick. Alright, so now I'm ready to put my last little bit of hair on. And I'm going to do what I always do, whether it's a swim jig or like a walleye jig or whatever it is. Any jig that I do, I just prefer to have a really thin collar. I mean, you could tie this off right now and fish with it. But I prefer a really thin. I'm going to go as far up as I can. I'm going to pull down nice and tight. And this hair is from the bottom of the tail, so it should have a lot of life in it. Sometimes you gotta really twist it. Doesn't want to wrap around. I'm trying not to hit my head. There it goes. But I'll be alright, actually. It's been sitting there so long that thick mono has memory and it's staying where I want it to anyway. Flare. I always want to keep an eye on the hook side of this bait because that's how it's going to swim. That's what you're going to see. Even though, you know, you're fishing this thing in 12 feet of water and you're fishing at 6 feet down, most likely the fish are going to see the bottom of the bait anyway. A little bit more. Right there. Hold back these fibers. Snap your thread. So I'm going to keep this live. I wrapped a few times on there, so I didn't lose anything. I'm not really going to lose anything at all. It's really just a little inconvenience. Because it happens. If you say it's never happened to you, then you've probably never tied a fly before, especially with 70 denier. So I'm just going to give this, I don't know, 5-6 wraps. My collar might be a little bleeped, but we'll see. I'll try and fix this up. So, it's always fun when that happens. Put this back. Give a couple good wraps. I'm already pretty cinched down on there. So now I'm going to take my razor blade. I'm going to push right on where my red thread is. And I'm going to clip all my hair off. Disaster averted. So, kind of. When that happens, you've got two choices. You can either take the hair off and redo it, and it'll look neater, but, you know, that's the first time in these videos that it's happened, and that's life, you know. I mean, you're gonna break 210, you're gonna break 70, you're gonna break 140. If you don't want to break thread, use 240 GSP and bulk up that bait, because that's what you're gonna get. So I'm gonna just half hitch around all that stuff. Maybe I'll give it 2. I'll put some head cement on this and it will be ready. I didn't go super thick with the deer hair on this one. A lot of deer hair jigs you'll see at a bait shop or whatever, they're super thick. And that can add bulk. I mean, that can make a bait look bigger, but in terms of jigging, whether it's jigging off the bottom or whether it's just kind of thumping it suspended, you're going to want a thinner bait. So this, I know how I'm going to be fishing it, and I'm not looking for a ton of bulk, and so you go thinner. And if anything, if you don't know, go thin, right? So Chartreuse, Berkley, 3/8 ounce, 4/0 swim jig. Juniors Fishing Company on Instagram, at juniorsfishingcompany.com. I've got this one on the hopper, and then yeah, we'll see. I don't know, I've got a bunch of jigs laid out that I've got some ideas for, so we'll see you on the next one.